It's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Lee Arnold Green, Sr. We're going to be discussing his amazing book, The Book of Affinitive Life, Part 2, in conjunction, The Book of Life. Now, it's available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. And people, when you head on over to his Amazon and Barnes & Noble pages, pick up The Book of Affinitive Life. Of course, that's the main anchor for today. But there are two other books that are still in creation, so make sure that you check back in frequently to get them the moment they're available. And then there are also two other books that are already written and published. So that's 3 in totality, another 2 on the horizon, and we'll get to some of those later on in the interview, but make sure you're looking into everything that Lee has in store because it's an absolute treat, and you're going to want to take advantage of it. Now, before we go any further, I do want to take this opportunity and point out that Lee was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best publishers in the business, CITI of Books. People, listen, if you have a book that you've created or you know someone that have a book that they've created, I'm telling you, give yourself the best gifts you could possibly give. Contact CITI of Books and see what their fantastic team can do for you. They're one of the best in the business to do it. They take your literary creation to the next level, and you could do no wrong by heading on over there. Check out cityofbooks.com to gather more information and see what they can do for you today. Now listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Lee here on the line. The education is second to none, and you're going to want to be a part of it, okay? You're going to want to learn from it. And at the end of the day, Lee knows the book better than I ever could, so let's bring him here with us to discuss it, okay? Lee, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, listen, we're very much looking forward to this, Lee. I know the education that we're going to be able to find in your book is wonderful, and I know we have a lot of information to cover pertaining to it. Before we jump into those pages, though, I want to learn a little bit more about your background, so let's start there. Lee, tell us a little bit more about yourself, please.
Well, I have an education in psychology and human service technician, graduated from Delta State University. And the knowledge that I have came through experience, particularly on the spiritual side of my experience, the experience with God. And this is what led me to writing such a book. This book doesn't only include or composes the Book of Affinitive Life or the Affinitive Life, but Addictive Life as well. It's a book that actually composes 2 books into one. So addiction goes from addictive life to affinitive life, and that's what this book is all about. I am actually somewhat a spirit writer.
You know, Lee, let's go a little bit more in depth with the book itself. I love what you're talking about here. Tell us a little bit more about the words on the page and really what the Book of Affinitive Life entails.
The Book of Affinitive Life is actually the life after addictive life, whereas the world continuously to think that an individual is dealing with an addictive life or addiction. They are not. They are dealing with affinitive life. And affinitive life is the habitual lifestyle or habit that goes on down the road for a lifetime. And so it is spirit-based, whereas addiction is emotional-based. You go from addictive life to affinitive life, and affinitive life contains a spirit that becomes an integral part of your natural spirit. And so affinitive life works as your natural spirit. It is a life that borrows from natural language. So all of your physiological and biological existence is used by affinitive life because of the spirit being an integral part of your natural spirit. And this is why people can appear to be on addiction for so many years, but they're not. It's working in a natural way, and it's signal-based. The love is no longer, the pleasure is no longer addictive pleasure, but it's a special source of pleasure of affinitive love. Now that book there is the book number 1. The book we're dealing with now is hatred. And hatred comes about by means of an unprovoked attack. This attack becomes horrific, and when it's horrific, people emotionally run from their conscious mind into their subconscious mind, and that's in darkness. In other words, you run from the conscious mind of light into the subconscious mind of darkness. And that's the problem we have in the world today, based on hatred. And so in your subconscious mind of darkness, you hate. And the only way you could connect with that person is through a conscious effect. So through a conscious effect in darkness of your subconscious mind, you can reach them through a conscious effect. Other than that, people are in darkness, and they are subliminally ignorant in darkness as to the truth. You go into denial. And so in your subconscious mind of hatred, people are in denial. And this is why they carry hatred for so long. That's what this book is basically about. It's showing you that that's not an emotion. That's a spirit being.
Listen, Lee, you said a mouthful there, man. I'm right with you. Let's talk about inspiration now. Lee, why did you feel compelled to write this narrative?
This particular book was written because I started out with the signal of love. This is the signal of hatred. Is how, for example, 9/11, and people that saw that tragedy, it was horrific. And many people who it was so horrific, they emotionally ran to their subconscious mind. And this is why people end up with post-traumatic stress. And so I started out writing about the signal of love, and ended up the signal of hate came about because I'm dealing with the spirit world, and God is leading me to write this. So it's not something that I or any individual could conjure up or write. This information came about by just obeying my spirit and writing. And it ended up being such a big book that the book had to become 2 parts. And so this is what it's all about. It's beyond this world, but it's telling us giving us a lot of the education we need about the unanswered questions we have about hatred. Why are people shooting up these places today? You can't go to the supermarket, somebody carrying this hate spirit, and they are coming in and killing up people. Understand me? Love is about the first book, number 1, is about love, okay? But this hate signal is what we're dealing with. We need to understand what's going on, why people are doing this. We know market see, market do, and so people copy people, but it's still hatred that they are carrying. And hatred is so devastating. It begins with an emotion, it becomes a spirit, and when it becomes a spirit, we have a problem with that individual.
Absolutely. Absolutely. People, again, we're here on the line with Lee Arnold Green Sr. We're discussing his book, The Book of Affinitive Life, Part 2, in conjunction, The Book of Life. Available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. Remember, there are 2 other books that have been published. Check them both out when you head on over there. and check back in frequently for the 2 other ones that are still in creation as of this moment. I want to take an opportunity. We're gonna come back to inspiration in a sec, but I want to take a second as we start to close out of this fantastic book. This book deals with a lot, right? When you're talking about addiction, when you're talking about hatred, I mean, oh boy, there's so much that we can touch up on, and there's a lot to go around, as I stated when we first started the interview. Now, for any of our listening audience members out there that find themselves going through a tough time right now, either battling addiction or battling hatred in their lives, I want to take an opportunity for any tips that you can offer. And people, you know it. I have already said it. Amazon and Barnes & Noble are where you have to go. You got to purchase the book. You got to gather all the information for yourself to learn it all. But since we have you here on the line, Lee, I want to steal some words of wisdom for you, as if my listening audience needs any more of an incentive to purchase. Any tips that you can offer them, please share with us.
Yeah, we need to understand how hatred works. We need to understand how to actually get rid of hatred. And in order to get rid of hatred, you have to fight the thought. You have to simply refrain from entertaining a thought. You have to refrain from the feelings that you have about a person, a place, a thing, or an activity, or an event. And this is how you actually get rid of hatred. Hatred, you have to face it on. You have to go concentrate on it and reject it. When it comes forward spontaneously, you have to reject it. This is how to get rid of hatred. And this is the significance of this book. It is to show you how hatred exists, and it is to show you how to actually eradicate hatred out of your life, because hatred is a spirit. And these are bad spirits that has evil spirit connected to them. And it's the evil spirit that is attached to a bad spirit that you have that causes people to be able to do the bad things in this world. And so that's the spiritual level that even the preacher and the church need to understand this. Everything is not superficial in the Bible. God is still revealing things to this world through people that he's able to use. And I'm one of those people that he has used to write this book. And as you have said, you can't get half of what the book contains out of this particular interview. You're going to have to buy the book. And the basic knowledge and the gist of this book and this interview is to encourage people of the significance of this book based on hatred. We need to understand it so that we can get a hold of hatred and be able to generally teach our friends and our neighbors how to eradicate hatred and pass the word on and spread it through the world. Mm-hmm. That's the gist of this book. That's what it's all about. That's what I'm trying to do with this book. I'm trying to produce novel knowledge that you're not going to get from anywhere else because it's not existing in a composed manner.
You know, Lee, as I mentioned before, we're going to go back into inspiration now. Now, we know about the inspiration behind this particular narrative, the Book of Affinitive Life. But as I've mentioned a couple of times already, people, this is not the only book that he's written. So when it comes to writing in particular, Lee, where does that love for creative writing come from? Has this always been a part of your life? Is this a hobby of yours growing up? Talk to us a little bit more about that.
No, it hadn't been a hobby of mine. I did think of writing a book, but in order to sell a book, it needs to be unique. And I waited on the Lord to give me something. And my inspiration to write this book came out of my life of drug addiction. I was seeking the answer to addiction. And the answer to addiction, my seeking led to me being a writer. I had to write about the effects of drugs. And this is how I end up with the knowledge. And this book, having two books into one, I learned how that addictive life ends up at the end of addictive life, because addiction is a process. And at the end of that process, you end up with affinitive life, which is the habitual lifestyle that goes on as a part of your natural life for the rest of your life. So this is how I ended up becoming a real bona fide writer. And God gave me that capacity to write what he had given me, had revealed to me after standing through drug addiction, the fight. This book here composes that two parts of addiction. The first half, second half. The second half is when you have to stand up against withdrawal symptoms. And in doing so, you obtain knowledge. And that knowledge that you obtain helps you to get through addictive life, but also helps you to live a responsible and successful affinitive life. All the same, with the same entity, person, place, thing, or activity. The same person, place, or activity that addiction is becomes the same person, place, thing, or activity affinitive life centers on. And this is where the world is lost and deceived to think that because you are still seeking out that who or what for pleasure is addiction, when it's not. The pleasure is not addictive pleasure. It's special source of pleasure of affinitive love. And that love is, in essence, an acquired natural for affinitive life, not addictive.
I love it. Listen, people, I'm sold. All right. I know you all are as well. I want to take an opportunity now and go to another one of your titles. We have a few minutes here as we close out, Lee. You have, as I mentioned, two other books that have been published already. Now, people, when you head on over to his Amazon, Barnes & Noble pages, you're going to see those other ones. Of course, today was all about the Book of Affinitive Life. But also, on his Amazon pages, you're going to find the 21st Century Black History, from the Atlantic slave trade in America to its impact on African Americans today. And you're also going to find another book called The Answer to the Subjective Process of Drug Addictions and Natural Addictions. Now listen, Lee, nobody knows your books better than you. Okay, so dealer's choice here. Please talk to us about another one of your titles, either a book that has already been published or one of the two that's still in creation. But take it away whenever you're ready.
The 21st Century Black History book is significant. It entails the, I think around chapter 16, the significance of the hate spirit, because the book of the 21st Century Black History book is actually about slavery and racial hatred. So it's talking to us about racial hatred. And that's important to understand why, in during that time, that the things that was done to our enslaved Africans were done in such a way by one human to another human without any objection, without conviction. It is because of the darkness of hatred, people being in the darkness of the subconscious mind emotionally. They can't see these things. And when you come to a person and start talking to them about it, this gives them that conscious effect. Now, they may reject you, but that's the only conscious effect they get. Some people get hold of that conscious effect, and they may be able to come out of the darkness back into the light. So that's the significance of the 21st Black History book. Of all of the history this book contains, the significance is still about hatred. Why this type of hatred went on. And then we have the next book, the answer to the subjective process of drug addiction, natural addiction, teaches you about drug addiction, how people, why they puff on a cigarette, why they sip and tote a can or a cup around. It interests me myself to understand that you sip on that cup to keep the high going or to pick it back up. You puff on that cigarette in order to take the high back up. And this is why people are puffing on that cigarette. Or this is why some people tote a can or a cup around, even when the beer, for example, is hot, they hold it and sip on it. It's to take the high back up once it has come down. It's to take the nicotine sensation back up after it has descended. Once diminished, you sip a little bit, take it back up. But at the same time, this is how these people end up so drunk, and not aware of this.
You know what you have to do. If you haven't been sold already, pinch yourself. You're asleep. Amazon and Barnes & Noble are where you have to go. The Book of Affinitive Life, Part 2, in conjunction, the Book of Life was the main title we discussed today. But make sure you look into the 21st century Black history. Also, the answer to the subjective process of drug addictions and natural addictions. Lee, this has been an absolute pleasure. Such an honor. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
I'm glad to be here. It's been a pleasure.